Both campaigns have armies of lawyers ready, especially in Ohio and Florida. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow joins me now. Rachel, we saw lines. People were voting until 1 o'clock this morning in Florida.
That's right. The lines.
You have done more reporting than anyone on this.
The lines on the early voting in Ohio and Florida in particular, but in a lot of places around the country, are both heartening and disheartening. So on the one hand, it is an act of heroism by these people to be out there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, more than 8 hours. On the other hand, why is it that people have to wait 8 hours in order to vote in this country? We have seen a restriction on the number of hours and the number of days in early voting. In Ohio, Secretary of State John Husted there fought tooth and nail all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States to try to reduce the number of days of early voting. He was rebuffed in those efforts. He did reduce the number of hours in early voting, which is why you saw those tremendous lines, particularly in black districts like in inner city Cleveland yesterday. In Florida, rather, Rick Scott and the Republican legislature there, the general counsel of the Republican Party, drafted legislation for them to cut back early voting days by almost half in Florida. And so you have seen lines that take people, until after 1 in the morning to be voting. And it's just, it's on purpose. It is to make voting harder so that fewer people vote. And it is, I find it outrageous.
It's outrageous, and when you look at the lines of people and the passion people have to vote, it is so reaffirming at the same time as you're really frustrated for them. Who has that kind of time?
Yes.
Especially the people who are the least advantaged.
The people who are out there for 8 hours, you want to give them a medal, but then not everybody can do that. I mean, if you have an elderly parent that you're taking care of, or you've got kids that you're taking care of, or you've got work responsibilities that you cannot get out of, I mean, these are people who are being responsible enough that they're getting up, in some cases, in the pre-dawn hours on early voting days. What else would you have them do in order to be more responsible about this? And still, we're asking something of them that reasonably should not be asked of somebody to exercise their citizenship. And it's not the same in every state. It's not the same in every district. And it's deliberate. I mean, big picture, just listening to you talking with your guests earlier this hour about the overall hopes for the Romney campaign. I mean, it was a 74% white electorate in 2008. They're desperately hoping that it is still 74% white, or maybe more white than that, and that's their path. That's their only path. And to see in minority districts how difficult it has been made to vote in swing states this year, it's a very political thing.
The other path is to decrease the number of young people, and be below the 18% that it was last time around.
Mm-hmm. And so you've seen attempted crackdowns, especially on trying to make student IDs not count as the appropriate voter ID.
And they lost all of those rounds. I was very interested to see that. What about the states where there has not been early voting? Pennsylvania, for instance. No early voting in Pennsylvania. Is that just because of the Republican governor, the Republican legislature?
It's interesting. Some states just don't have early voting and don't seem to want it, regardless of the partisan character of the state. I mean, in Ohio, the reason they got it was in 2004, John Kerry versus George W. Bush. Ohio was an absolute disaster in terms of those lines in Ohio. People waiting out in the rain until well after midnight trying to get in. Again, just this heroism. And in 2005, to Ohio's credit, that's when they added all of those early voting days. And since then, in every election they've held for the past 7 years, there have been these early voting days that include souls to the polls last Sunday before the election and all of those things, including for the Republican primary this year in Ohio. But for this election alone, they wanted to pull that back. And it wasn't because there was any problem with early voting the way it was going in Ohio. It was because it had gone very well. And when voting goes well, when there are lots of opportunities to vote, more people vote. And for some partisans, that is a problem.
Do you think that the Obama campaign is misleading us or fooling themselves when they look at the early voting advantage that they say that they have enjoyed? And we can fact check them on a number of these, and that they are ahead of the game and thinking that they have banked enough to offset even large election day turnouts tomorrow.
Both sides at this point in the campaign, love to pound their chests and say how much they're going to win. A, we all know that it's close. And B, if you look carefully about what the Democrats are bragging on there, yes, they do have an early voting advantage in most of these swing states. That's because
the population has increased.
The population has increased, but also demographic groups prefer early voting for a number of reasons, including cultural reasons. I mean, that souls to the polls thing is real. In African American communities, leaving church and going to the polls collectively, it's a cultural thing. There's a reason why Democrats tend to win in early voting. But when you look at the margins in 2012 versus 2008, the Democrats have had those margins cut into. And you look at the states where it was close anyway, having the margin get narrower doesn't mean you have enough of a cushion to be comfortable on Election Day. John McCain and Sarah Palin versus Barack Obama and Joe Biden on Election Day alone in 2008 would have been a different result. Those early voting numbers need to be big for the Democrats in order for them to win.
Rachel Maddow, we can't wait to see all of your coverage tomorrow.
I'm so excited.
This is your favorite day.
Exactly. Thanks,
Thank you very much.